Loose all and trim sharp to the wind!
Unfurl aloft! Man your sheets!
Give me a hand here!
Ubisoft have been sailing in rough seas as of late, and this week has been particularly tumultuous for the Embattled brand, announcing the shutdown of their free-to-play shooter Xdefiant and the closure of its San Francisco, Osaka and Sydney production studios. It's just the latest hole put in the ship of Ubisoft in a year full of copping broadsides, and the released financials now have sharks smelling blood in the water, with the Guillemot family desperately looking for a lifeline while still maintaining control of the Embattled company. Let's take a look at how Ubisoft went from being one of the leading AAA developers in the industry to the sinking ship it is today, and see just what has to be done to keep it afloat. I also want to preface this article by saying that this is a data-driven look at what has happened in recent years, and while there will be some speculation about what happens behind closed boardroom doors, I will add references in the article on the website at every opportunity after the request of my GTA Trilogy investigation. Thank you for providing feedback on my articles and videos, as it helps make my job and What's It Like even better. Now, before we begin this deep dive, would you mind liking and subscribing? It's the best way to help raise What's It Like stock on YouTube, and I can't thank you enough for doing so. Ubisoft was living large in the early 2000s with many runaway successes of AAA titles like Rainbow Six Vegas, Assassin's Creed, Splinter Cell, Far Cry, and Ghost Recon. Each of these titles managed to bring something new to gamers, crafting beautifully immersive worlds with new gameplay elements. Ubisoft started garnering a reputation to be the studio to strive to beat, testing the limits of the hardware available at the time, and also pushing the boundaries in open world exploration and storytelling. They became the industry leaders, posting comfortable growth every year, and started annualizing a lot of their popular franchises, aiming to go bigger with each iteration of their leading games. This, it would seem, would actually be the start of their downfall, as franchise fatigue started to set in. Ubisoft started to get a little too comfortable, and instead of pushing boundaries, they started pushing out yearly franchises with a cookie-cutter approach. Assassin's Creed Unity started this trend, and also as the first Assassin's Creed on the then next-gen consoles, released in an almost unplayable state. Far Cry 4 struggled to meet Far Cry 3's total sales, and despite 5 being a hit, 6 underwhelmingly performed with a bloated budget, appearing on sales mere months after release. The company had started shifting towards live service games, which were popular at first, and Rainbow Six Siege managed to catch lightning in a bottle and generate a lot of income from the company. Ubisoft would try to capture this again by making the Division 2 and Ghost Recon Breakpoint follow a similar live service model, which would see these franchises underwhelm players and struggle sales-wise. This started to become a leading trend, with production costs bloating, the pandemic, and tone-deaf decisions by the leadership at Ubisoft looking to appease shareholders. The most shocking statement came from Philippe Tremblay, director of subscriptions, who said at the launch of Ubisoft Plus, which was sort of a Game Pass for Ubisoft, "One of the things we want gamers to get used to, a little bit like DVD, having their own games. That's a consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection, so it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game." Obviously, this was met with universal backlash, especially considering at the time there was a heated debate around video game preservation, which was spurred on by Nintendo's spate of piracy lawsuits. The lack of understanding consumers was further pushed with the ill-fated launch of Skull and Bones, touted as a quadruple A title that flopped immediately and sunk to the bottom of the ocean, despite several beta tests providing feedback that the consumers didn't want this as a live service. Couple this with Ubisoft's obstinance to double down on their universally hated Uplay platform instead of making titles available on Steam, which was easily the largest distribution juggernaut in the industry, which meant releases just continued to fail to meet expectations. Even the Star Wars license couldn't turn things around as Ubisoft developed a cookie-cutter version of their open worlds with Star Wars skins slapped on top for Star Wars Outlaws. The biggest hit the company would take, though, is with their flagship series, Assassin's Creed, which has now been delayed to 2025 following a myriad of negative coverage from stealing designs, racially stereotypical rap music in battle, and even the Japanese government calling for a ban on the game. All of this leads up to this week with the surprise shutdown of Xdefiant, a free-to-play shooter that was confirmed to not be getting axed merely a month ago by the creative director Mark Rubin. This knee-jerk pulling of a game and offering refunds tends to suggest Ubisoft could be preparing for an acquisition by tidying up its books. Unfortunately, this also means the shutdown has seen 277 staff laid off across its San Francisco, Osaka and Sydney production studios. Now, consumer sentiment towards Ubisoft is at an all-time low, and gamers are actually cheering on the downfall of this once revered company, and really the anticipation for Assassin's Creed Shadows seems to have dried up. If Ubisoft aren't moving towards an acquisition, all hopes will be looking to Japan, as Shadows will be the shining hope for Ubisoft weathering the current storm. If it fails to meet expectations, Ubisoft may very well have to be comfortable with not owning their company. Right before publishing this article, news broke that Ubisoft is in negotiations with Chinese giant Tencent, with industry sources citing that the Guillemot family is desperate to try and find a way to retain control while still being partially bought out. Tencent already own a 10% share in Ubisoft, and Tencent, however, want a larger stake in the company and even more influence on the board decisions moving forward. Things aren't looking good for the Embattled company, with the share prices rising in the news today that Tencent may take over. And it would seem that the shareholders that the Guillemot family tried to appease by turning their back on consumers will be the very ones to feed them to the sharks.
A man of vision.
Thanks so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. The best way you can support me is to like and subscribe and continue watching my content if you enjoy it. But if you do want to go that bit extra, you can buy me a coffee or join our Patreon, which shows you behind the scenes of this channel. Thanks again.